Thank you, and enjoy the performance.
Hello, I'm Richard Bryant, Executive Director of Musco Center for the Arts at Chapman University. This evening, we welcome you back to At the Musco, a series of live online events where you can connect in real time with real people, Chapman faculty and students, professional artists, and one another, all engaged in what we call the art of community. In February 2019, the Juilliard String Quartet appeared on the Musco stage, and they would have returned this last weekend had it not been for the pandemic. However, Musco Center's ongoing relationship with the Juilliard String Quartet has not only resulted in inspiring masterclasses with our students and fabulous performances here, but the Juilliards, as we call them, have continued our connection last week through an online question and answer session with students and now a live conversation with you this evening. This ensemble has been hailed by the Boston Globe as the most important American quartet in history. We invite you to ask its members your questions about music, collaboration, the state of the arts, the world. I do so wish we could all walk through that door, and we will again. But for now, welcome to At the Musco Center online, featuring the Juilliard String Quartet in conversation. And here's your host, Musco Center's Napoleon Gladney.
Thank you so much, Richard. Good evening and welcome to At the Musco. I'm Napoleon Gladney, Musco Center Audience Development Manager and your host tonight. We are so privileged to welcome back the current members of the Juilliard String Quartet, violinist Areta Zhulla and Ronald Copes, violist Roger Tapping, and cellist Astrid Schween. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
We are so thankful that you're joining us tonight. I want to note that you are all so generous with your time, with your artistry, and with your insight. Thank you for being here with us tonight. It means a lot.
It's a pleasure.
Pleasure to be here.
Yes. A unique part of this conversation is that we asked you, our audience, to submit questions for the quartet prior to tonight. We will be asking some of those questions throughout the evening. We'll also be taking questions in the live chat, throughout Facebook and the YouTube live chat. So ask those questions and please don't be shy. Unfortunately, as Richard mentioned, we had to cancel Juilliard String Quartet's previously scheduled performance at Musco Center on Sunday, May 2nd. It will have been the second time the quartet performed at Musco Center and the third time the quartet performed at Chapman University. Pop quiz for the four of you. Did you know the year Juilliard String Quartet first performed at Chapman University?
Oh boy.
No idea. I can tell you my first time performing there.
Whoa, okay. When was that?
Last year. And it was memorable and gorgeous.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about what you thought of the hall and the space.
We loved it. We had such a good time playing there. Do you remember the program? I know Dvorak's American Quartet was there.
Yeah,
I can't somehow, right?
Bartok 3?
Bartok 3, probably. Yeah, we just had such a good time. It was at the end, towards the end of our year, our season. So it was a little bit of that California sort of, beauty and fun concert going experience. We had a great time.
Oh, yeah, we loved having you.
Students as well. It was great. Yeah.
So the answer to that question is 1964.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, as part of the college's arts lecture series. The members at the time were Robert Mann, Isidore Cohen, Klaus Adam, and Raphael Hillier.
Right.
So now let's fast forward to the 2019-20 season and your tour, which included a performance with Musco Center on May 2nd. What happened, around February, March. And did you have any shows canceled other than ours in May?
Well, everything was canceled. A lot of our concerts in April were canceled, of course, and some in May, including the seminar that we do at the Juilliard School, which is it's sort. I look forward to it every single year, and yeah, it's a sad time to not be able to see the students.
Yeah.
Before April, we were in Europe in January and early February. We came back, and then we had auditions in March, and then the world turned upside down. Yeah.
Wow. How many cities do you normally hit in a tour, in a season?
It depends. I feel like it's more about concerts, right? How many we try to have maybe between
Roughly
in
40.
my
Wow.
roughly what?
Roughly 40, 50 concerts. It depends.
A year, you mean? Yeah, so
Yeah.
per tour it would be something around 10, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, 7 to 10, 7 to 12. It's been up and down somewhere there.
And
Does anyone remember the repertory that was going to be performed at Musco Center?
Yes.
Yeah. We
Beethoven.
actually can't forget it, to be honest.
We were going to do a lot of Beethoven, I think,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
some Kurtag. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Concerti #1, Beethoven and Kurtag, fantastic piece by Kurtag. And Opus 131, Beethoven, one of the great late Beethovens.
The Mountain of
The
131. It was going to be a really good program, if we may say
Yes.
so.
We've been playing a lot and just loving playing all the music. So, yeah.
So this year is Beethoven's birthday anniversary, right? 250 years?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Roger, can you speak to the significance of Beethoven to you?
Oh my goodness, that's a big question.
It is.
Well, there are times when you think, like, if he hadn't existed, I mean, you just can't imagine there's so many composers after him who were so deeply, deeply influenced by him, apart from his own music, which is just speaks to us so strongly. I mean, he started out with his fantastic early works, which is still so much identifiably him, and then you just follow this sort of deepening that he does, the incredible sort of complexity and imagination. And then he spent the last few years writing these late quartets. He didn't know they were going to be as late as they were. He didn't know he was going to die soon after them. We think of them as late quartets, and they're so rich. And nothing's been sort of done better than that ever since, but so many people were influenced by them. So I think it's sort of fed the whole repertoire since. So tremendously significant for everything we do, really.
Does anyone else want to tell us about the significance of Beethoven to them personally in their artistry?
I mean, Roger said it so well. I just want to add that just seeing Ron and Roger, who have played these quartets for most of their life, maybe, right? And just to see how excited they get, you know, I'm new to this a little bit, right? And so I'm still building my Beethoven catalog right now. But just seeing how excited and how, he's amazing. He keeps it fresh. It's always a journey of exploration, no matter how many times you played the same piece. And how fun is that to work on, you know, year after year, decade after decade. And that's just incredible. So he deserves celebrating for sure.
I love that. We have our first question from the audience, actually. Areta, you mentioned that you are new to this. You are also the newest member of Juilliard String Quartet. Everyone wants to know, how long have each of you been with the quartet and how did you become a member? Let's start with Areta.
Yeah. This was my second season with the quartet. I've played quite a lot of chamber music before this. Not too many string quartets, but a little bit. What was the second part of this question?
How did you join?
Oh, there was an audition process. And when was this? This was back in November 2017, I want to say, something like that. And I just, you know, they gave me a couple of pieces to prepare, 5 pieces, I think, to prepare for the day. We had the regular 5-hour rehearsal with a lunch break in between. And I just sort of I have the most vivid memory of playing Beethoven, actually, 127, the opening chord. And I just stopped right after because I couldn't believe my ears of the sound of these people. And we were in a living room, in someone's living room. It wasn't anything fancy. It was just, it was incredible. It was incredible. And it just goes to tell you, it's the sound of the Juilliard Quartet. Somehow the members change, yet the sound remains. And I'll never forget the first moment of me living that.
Astrid, let us know your time with the quartet and how you came to be associated.
Okay. I joined the quartet in 2016. And let's see, I think all of us joined via audition, but, being in the chamber music world, we have ways of intersecting over time. And Roger and I had played together in Boston, the Boston Chamber Music Society. And so I think when the quartet realized that Joel Krosnick would be considering his last year in the quartet, they started amassing a list of people. And I'm be forever grateful to Roger for thinking of my name as a contender. And
Thanks for saying yes.
Also great here. Thank you, Roger, for putting Astrid in there somehow.
Yeah, it's a very nice place to go to work.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Since I mentioned you so much, Roger, can you speak about your time with Juilliard?
Yes, this is the end of my 7th season already. And I'd been in a quartet before and had to leave for sort of family reasons. And I thought that was the end. I thought I wouldn't be able to play quartets anymore. And I used to get calls from people saying, because people knew I'd been in a quartet and they knew I knew a lot of students. And they'd say, we need somebody in our quartet, a viola player or second violin or something. And I got one of these calls from Ron. And I was expecting that sort of thing. And he said, we need somebody in the quartet. Would you like to be considered? And I remember where I was. I visited some sort of violin dealer or something, and so that was a real thrill because the idea of doing it again was and actually I must tell you that the piece I most wanted to do again was Opus 131, and I've been sort of waiting all this time for it to come back into our lives, and I'm not disappointed.
Oh.
Ron, your turn.
Well, I joined in 1997. I just finished my, the 23rd season. And actually, it doesn't feel like we finished it yet. And maybe it goes on into next year, I don't know. But anyway, I had a similar kind of experience. I basically got a call from Sam Rhodes at one point, and he just mentioned that Bobby Mann was going to be retiring, and Joel Smirnoff would become the new first violinist, and was curious whether I would be interested in joining the quartet. And of course, I had been hearing the Juilliard String Quartet my entire life, and I wasn't going to say no. So I flew out to New York and auditioned, and spent 2 days just going through a lot of repertoire, but mainly just sort of finding out what it would be like to rehearse with them.
Yeah.
And one of the pieces that we did was the Opus 131. So that piece seems to come full circle in some respects. And
Sorry to interrupt you, Ron. As you can imagine, Musco is really missing out with 131.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
This May.
There is a certain feeling of being deprived of this work, which we were enjoying so much. But I had played all of the other Beethoven quartets, but I had never performed 131. So having a chance to sit down with the Juilliard String Quartet and learn 131 for me was it was this fantastic opportunity. And I thought, even if I am not invited to be in the quartet, that will be an experience that I'll cherish. And so it was, it worked out, but it was, this piece has a lot of memories because of that.
Well, that's actually a really good transition because we actually have a little snippet of you all performing Beethoven String Quartet number 14 in C sharp minor, opus 131, filmed live at DePaul University School of Music's Mary Patricia Gannon Concert Hall on September 24th, 2019. Let's take a look at that now. You just saw a snippet of Beethoven String Quartet number 14 in C sharp minor, opus 131, performed by the Juilliard String Quartet, whom are all joining us tonight. All right, everyone, tell me about what we just saw and heard. Can someone speak to that specific piece and how it felt to play? Let's start with Ron.
Well, it's that was one of our first performances, actually, of the quartet in this incarnation, done last fall, and this was the first year since Areta joined us that we were carrying it, and I'm not sure I remember exactly what that clip had on it.
It's from number 3, I think. This third section going into variations.
So the third piece and going on into the variation movement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it's part of the magic of this wonderful work that you have a recitative which sets up a beautiful slow movement that feels rhythmically not indefinite exactly, but not clearly defined in a way, and that something about the sweep of it and the swing of this piece actually involves some indefiniteness, and it's a fantastic feeling about it, and then a series of really quite magical variations on that theme. Beethoven himself, I think, described it when someone was asking him about this new quartet that he wrote. He wrote that, well, I just finished this quartet in C sharp minor. Thankfully, it has a little bit less lack of imagination than before. And I always enjoy that sort of self-deprecating quality that it didn't always show in Beethoven, but nevertheless, his description of something which is perhaps one of his most imaginative works, and he described it as a little bit less lack than before. So it's an amazingly perceptive and profoundly moving journey that takes place over 7 pieces.
And unexpected. You
Very.
would not expect it to start the way it starts, with a slow fugue, slow movement even. And then it has 7 movements, which nothing really has had.
No.
7 movements since then, and none of it interrupts. Actually, it all just kind of flows together, like Ron said, quite operatic. And it just ends with such a
hard
triumphant
statement.
well, yes, and at the same time somehow triumphant, just
Very.
heart-wrenching and triumphant at the same time. How does he do it?
There's a magnificence about the piece. There really is. It feels epic when you're performing it. It's very, very big.
And it sort of also reminds you that, and I remember this striking me so much when I first read a book about Beethoven, that he made his name first in Vienna as a pianist who would come and extemporize at a piano. And what people said about him was that he moved them so much to tears, or he'd sort of break them out of tears suddenly because he would get impatient with them. But I mean, just sitting at the piano and making this stuff up in this most emotional way. And this piece absolutely sort of goes back to that. It's like it's imagination just working like crazy. And he always had this, apparently. That's what people said about him as a player.
I absolutely love, I can feel through the computer screen, your passion and your connection to the music, but also with each other. It's like we're of course in squares, but how you also elegantly transition yourselves really shows your connection, and I really admire and appreciate that. When it comes to your repertory, how do you select that for your tours and your concerts? Let's start with Roger.
Roger.
Well, it's a whole mixture of things. I mean, basically, we're very lucky that we can just sort of sit around and sort of decide what would be great to do. Maybe I remember my first year with the quartet, we did the Schubert G major, and we enjoyed that. So we thought, well, next year let's do the Death and the Maiden, and we played Lyric Suite by Berg, which is so difficult. And I think I said, well, I'd never done one of the other Berg string quartet before. So I remember just having that opportunity to sort of be able to put that out there. And then other people will sort of suggest different things. And then there are some sort of givens, like every now and again, like every 2 years, we'll want to commission something. Mm-hmm. We always want to sort of make a sort of balanced meal, you might say, out of a program. So gradually it gets put together from different people's tastes, and that sort of principle of there being something sort of gritty and maybe new in there, and how you make a sort of beautiful, balanced emotional program around that.
And sometimes there are celebrations, like the Beethoven year, or we have a 75th anniversary coming up. But how fun is it? Like Roger said, how fun is it just to sit around and try to figure out which amazing masterpiece would you like to play next, And how do you make a meal around it that's satisfying to you and the audience? Because that's important.
Do you ever have moments where someone is really gunning for a specific piece and someone is like, I am not feeling that at all?
That can happen.
Yeah, sometimes one of us might have a real hankering to play something and realize that it's just been in the quartet's repertoire rather recently. Yeah. And so then it has to go back on the shelf for another year or two.
Yeah, it's true.
I think most quartets have the experience that any one of the four of us has a veto.
Right.
In other words, it's really hard if one of us just were not to believe in a piece at all. It's really hard to kind of sit there and spend the time and the energy and the care that putting together a work really requires when we're in that position. So I think the idea is that we all sort of have to be committed to something. Now, that's not to say that occasionally we'll commission a work, and it won't be the most interesting thing to work on, but especially with the standard repertoire or the not even necessarily standard, but just works that have a record, have a performance history in a way, we would always come into it with a certain kind of commitment and feeling that.
That's great. So we have another question from the audience. Speaking of repertory, we want to know, what do you play when you're not playing for an audience? When it isn't going to be for a concert, do you choose music to just play with each other, for fun, not in preparation for something? Or do you just say, hey, I want to try this out? Does that happen?
I don't remember that ever happening. But it's a nice idea. We had the time.
Playing concerts is already the fun. So
it's quite a hardworking life, right?
Yeah.
And so we're constantly preparing for something. We're constantly on the road. The only time when we're not, it's in the summer where we take time off from each other. Mm-hmm. I personally, by myself, solo, like to play some Bach, sonatas and partitas. Those are always things. But together, maybe sometimes we read through some music that we want to consider for next year. Mm-hmm. That sometimes that happens, but it's never it's sad to say, but we don't really do it.
Well,
I don't want to say for fun, but
I think one of the aspects of a string quartet is that it's a very intense personal relationship. And as with any really intense relationships, you also want to create distances. You want to create opportunities that we have away from each other. And we all have personal lives outside of the quartet. And so as a result, it's not that we'll spend every moment together. We do enough of that when we're on a tour. And so it's not that we're looking for opportunities to come together and do other things. And I think a little bit the idea of sitting down and reading for fun or playing music for fun, if we're going to do that, we might choose to do it with other people that we
exactly.
don't know as well and aren't our colleagues in the same way.
If we have the time to be together, we usually work on something that either is coming up the next season or even the season after that, just to see how much time will we need to work on this.
Yes.
Just to kind of put things in perspective. And we're always thinking a season or two ahead. So it's hard to have fun while you're doing business with these guys.
And of course, then there are also the business meetings. I mean, where
Right.
we're trying to decide, do we want to travel on such and such a date 2 months from now? Does it make sense to schedule staying over in a hotel on that night or in that place? Or those kinds of decisions need to be made, as well as whether to accept a particular date, or something along those lines. So there's a lot of non-musical interaction that's important too, of course.
But it's
We
really fun
have,
to do music with different people at festivals and things. I mean, just without the sort of pressure that, this is the Juilliard Quartet, and it's really fun to do
Yeah,
that.
it is.
we have another question from the audience, actually.
Mhm.
You mentioned commissioning new work.
Mhm.
Can you speak about a recent experience you've had with a living composer, and what is that like?
Well, it's always so interesting. I mean, the last two, wonderful guy called Lembit Beecher, who wrote a beautiful piece for us, which was full of memories, and so sort of being on stage with that, and it was particularly important to be with him in the working period for that, because I mean, there's only so much you can tell from a score somehow, and if somebody's in the room vividly describing what's in their mind and why he's written what he's written, it really helps you emotionally. So that was great, and as I say, full of emotions and nostalgias, which came from his own sort of perception of his own ancestors and history. And then previous to that, the great Mario Davidovsky worked with us, and who was a very very senior and well loved. He just died last year, actually. Was it this year? And a much respected figure, um, very senior guy, and he would come in and he would say, I'm not going to say anything. And then you just asked one question, he was off. And you had the whole of musical history, basically.
Wow.
Fantastic. It was so vivid.
It was wonderful working with Mario.
Yeah.
That was a very special interaction. And we brought him to Juilliard to present the work when it was brand new, and to show a little bit of the working process together in the early stages of the piece. And he was completely smitten with the students, and it was very mutual. It's a really lovely mix of temperaments.
And again, we learned so much from being with him, because the music on the page, you didn't quite know it was so precisely written. But in him being there, and his character and the way he described it, he clearly wanted to be lyrical and emotional and all these things. And you don't know, sort of, it gives you some permission to sort of find those things in the music. And that was important.
Thank you for answering that. That was really insightful. So in addition to Opus 131, we also have performance footage of you all performing Beethoven String Quartet number 1 in F major, Opus 18 number 1, also filmed live at DePaul University last fall. Let's take a look at that. Welcome back. We are here with the current members of the Juilliard String Quartet, Areta Zhulla, Ron Copes, Roger Tapping, and Astrid Schween. We just saw a clip of the quartet performing Beethoven String Quartet number 1 in F major, opus 18, number 1, presented as part of the Holtenschneider Performance Center Chamber Series at DePaul University School of Music. Now, let's talk about this piece of music. Astrid, do you have anything you want to, any knowledge you want to give us about being inside of this work?
Sure. Well, it's interesting when you were talking earlier, Napoleon, about Beethoven, and you wanted to know our associations. I can't help but think of Shakespeare. And I think the two men did so much to revolutionize their art forms forever, change the landscape. And there's this incredible human element to both of their work. And Opus 18 number 1 is no exception. It's quite well known for the slow movement, which has this beautiful reference to Romeo and Juliet, the tomb scene. And so there's some extraordinary melodic interplay that happens in that movement that's just, brings you to your knees. And at the same time, the outer movements have playful, witty, joyous, rhythmic vitality. It's a piece that has something of everything. And it's not his first quartet, it's the first in his Opus 18 publication, but it's an early string quartet, and already he hit the ground running with these incredible revolutionary ideas. It's a stunning work, and it's, as I say, it ain't easy.
Thank you for that. So last year, you all joined us at Chapman University, not only for a beautifully played concert at Musco Center, but you all generously gave your time to multiple days of master classes with our College of Performing Arts students. You returned to us last week for a Musco masterclass online, where you did a Q&A with our string students. You all also teach and coach regularly. What has this shift been like for you as teachers and coaches? Roger?
Well, let me think. It's been actually a godsend in some ways, because we are all separated. And so it's been this fantastic sort of ability to have contact with musicians, to talk about music. And I think that's been sort of both ways from the students and for us. I find that. I look forward to the lessons even more than usual. And then, I mean, there are tremendous technical limitations in the actual sound you're getting. But I mean, different platforms are better than others. Depends on the microphones. We all know these things. And so you have to sort of get through that. And at this point, at the end of this sort of month, I'm just longing just to hear those sort of beautiful fine nuances. You can sort of tell, but it's partly visual. You can sort of tell from the way people look when they're playing and so on. You get good at this, but you're still, there's something that if you were in the room, you just get it to the next level.
Yeah.
I think that's everybody else's experience.
Very much.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been really enjoying a different kind of closeness with the students, and kind of examining the music together and singing and uncovering, little secrets in the score, and imagining rehearsing and imagining performing, and going through the thought process. What does one do to prepare, and what strategies do you take on? And I've been just getting to know the individual members of the different chamber groups that I was coaching in a way that we just don't have time for in a normal coaching session. And my own students, it's a very intensive lesson. So it's a cello lesson plus. I think we are all exhausted at the end of 60 minutes. But it's lovely to see the kids really rebounding and stepping up to this new challenge, and being so resilient and open-minded. It's an extraordinary give and take, and it's been very meaningful.
It's been very useful for the students, I think, to actually record themselves a lot and listen to that. And there's not usually that much time to do that while you're in school and going to all the classes. And sure, there are downfalls to not being there live, for the sound, for the refinement, to work on the really refined things. But at the same time, there were pluses in this situation, in a way, to have them really analyze their own playing
Mhm.
and how that comes across rather than how it just feels to do, you know.
One of the things I noticed that sort of surprised me was how much more comfortable my students seemed when they were in their own homes, most of them, or their own apartments, and they were very much at home. And I was the guest instead of their coming into my studio. I was the guest coming into their homes, and it just changed. It's something. The dynamic changed in a very interesting way, and I really enjoyed it.
Also, it's more of a, you can connect with your teacher, I think, even multiple times a week if you need to, you know.
Right.
There
Yeah.
were times where if there was a problem, do you have 10 minutes? Of course I have 10 minutes.
Right.
I'm not going anywhere. So there's been that, especially for us, I think, because we spend a lot of our time traveling,
Mhm.
and we try to give so much to our students when we're back. And sometimes it's not as consistent as we would like it to be. And this has been really great in that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And it will definitely be something that I'll keep as we go on and as the world hopefully goes back to normal soon-ish. Yeah.
We have a question from the audience. Astrid, Areta, that was actually a really good segue for this question because we have people wondering, when you are on tour, how do you balance your coaching and your teaching then?
Well,
Well,
sorry.
while you're on tour, how do you balance your coaching and your teaching? Look, the coaching, a lot of the coaching and the teaching it has been live for me until now. I will make my students send me some recordings while I'm on tour just to make sure, if especially if they have something coming up, if they have an audition or a deadline of some sort, just to kind of help them during the week that we're away, you know. But sometimes we have to cram things into, 10 days or 2 weeks and then fly to China and Japan for the 15 days that we usually spend on those tours. And it depends. It depends also who the student is. You want to make sure that each student gets an individual um, um, way of treating them, because not everyone can be okay with a teacher going away for 2 weeks, right? And the younger you are, the more lessons, the more frequent your lessons should be, especially, yeah. And so it depends. I try to tailor it to my students anyway, but chamber music is definitely an in-person thing, and sometimes we have to have longer coachings when we come back from our tours, and sometimes we teach on Sundays because that's the life.
Ron, did you want to add something?
Well, one of the things that I felt is that um, I've been able to take 10 minutes on a day that I'm not normally teaching and listen to a particular passage and a student wants to play for me, or that I will have asked them to play for me on not one of the regular lessons, but something else like that. Or very frequently, because of the sound quality on over the internet, I've had students record their lesson material and send it to me a couple of days before their lesson. So I can at least hear to make sure that indeed what I'm hearing and seeing on the internet is actually, I can kind of translate it a little bit more easily if I've actually heard the sound they're producing. Or something closer to it. It's still recorded. It still tends to be all the dynamics are compressed into being the same level, but one can tell certainly a lot more about the expressive content of it. So it's been a fascinating experience. I've learned a lot. I've also realized that I can still get quite a bit out of doing a lesson over the internet. Um, and I think the students get something out of it. And I've been really very impressed in a way with how the students have been motivated, and they've continued to really work beautifully over the course of this time, which I wasn't expecting completely. I was expecting that some will, but almost all of them have worked really very impressively.
That's been my experience too. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like both sides, both the teachers and the students were all a little bit sad that the semester is over, because now what?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually going to continue working with, oh, not every week, but I'm not going to subject my students to that. But I've offered to
Yeah,
hear them over the summer in a way that I normally can't.
Yeah.
And
yeah, same
I
here.
have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's nice to keep that connection as much as possible. They seem to need that tether means something in a way.
yeah,
And they usually get that out of music festivals, but
right,
unfortunately,
right.
everything has been canceled. So we got to keep our students afloat, and not just afloat, but inspired, and to keep them going, keep the hunger going somehow.
And growing. Yeah.
We actually just got a bunch of questions and about the Juilliard School. Can maybe Ron, since you are a more senior member of the quartet, could you speak to what your affiliations are with the Juilliard School? We have questions about, is it a requirement to teach at Juilliard if you're in the quartet? Do you have to be an alumni of a Juilliard program? Yeah, can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I'll answer the last question first. No, you don't have to be an alum of Juilliard. When I joined the quartet, um, only Joel Smirnoff had gotten his master's at Juilliard. None of the rest of us had gone to Juilliard as students. Um, and it certainly is not a requirement at all. In terms of teaching at Juilliard, actually the appointment has always been an appointment to the Juilliard School and the quartet, sort of a joint appointment. Um, the Juilliard School makes up gives us a salary for being involved. They pay us to be in the quartet as well as to provide services to the school. So the quartet as a whole plays a couple of concerts at the school. I mean, we do a seminar, we do open rehearsals, as well as, of course, teaching and coaching teaching our instruments and coaching chamber music. So there is a lot of involvement with the school, and when I joined the quartet, the department chairs in the string instruments were all members of the quartet. That's since changed a little bit, but I, for instance, am the chair of the violin department right now, and we're sort of definitely part of the faculty of the school.
As I understand it, the actual origin of the quartet came from a sort of joint conception of the then president and the original first violinist, Robert Mann. So I'm not sure exactly who came up with the idea first. Do you know, Ron? But it's all.
My understanding is that William Schumann actually approached Bobby Mann and said, "I'd like to establish a quartet at the school," and and then he asked Bobby to go out and recruit other members of the quartet, find other members that would be compatible. So I believe that William Schumann actually approached Robert Mann about the idea.
So we're extraordinarily lucky to be so well supported by the school, and it's a nice because we are actually very sort of what's the word, autonomous, in the sense that we absolutely choose each other, and then we go and tell them this is the first violinist, whatever it is, and they're so supportive. So they're not controlling us, but they're, it's a very ideal relationship actually.
As it happens, two of us, Areta and I, were at pre-college and went through the college and got our masters and everything at Juilliard as well. So it's, for us, I don't want to speak for you, Areta, but I know for myself, it's kind of fun to have been on that side of the table and now to be over here and to have those different perspectives. That definitely informs the way I would like to teach and share music with the rest of the Juilliard community and especially the students. So
Yeah, I've spent most of my life at the Juilliard School by now, which is, yeah.
We have another question from the audience for Areta and Astrid, actually. What is it like to be groundbreaking women in a musical form in a quartet that has been long, heralded by men?
Astrid, you want to go? You were the
I was going to offer you the chance to do that. Well, I mean, I think in our day-to-day experience, we're two members of the quartet, and you know, as from the standpoint of being musicians, we're delighted and engaged and fully occupied. And then, of course, when you sort of step away from things and talk to people who make these observations, is kind of like, oh yeah, it's nice. And it's great that the school and the Juilliard quartet and the members of the quartet were all sort of everybody's open and listening for the right kinds of colleagues. And as it happens, you know, this was a time where this is what happened with the last two auditions. So yeah, it's lovely to be a part of this. Areta, maybe you can say that more eloquently.
I haven't really thought of it. While we're in the quartet, we don't think about it. You know, we just play our music, and it just so happened that this foursome works. But then you get the review that says, you know, first woman cellist of the Juilliard, or first woman violinist, whatever it says. And that's when you sort of like, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot. There's that. But it doesn't influence our, like Astrid said, our daily life whatsoever. It has nothing to do with anything, you know. It just happens to be that way. So
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing your insight, and it's still pretty amazing. So we have another question from the audience. I'll pose it to each of you. Let's start with Ron. Who was an influential teacher for you when you were coming up?
Well, I had individual teachers who were very influential, a number of them. In some ways, I also had other musicians who were very influential. One actually, an influence who meant a great deal to me was Pablo Casals. And I was fortunate enough to work with him at the Marlborough Festival for just for the last 2 or 3 years before he died. And I say I worked with him. He conducted a small chamber orchestra that I played in, but it was extremely inspiring, and he did a lot to help to create in my own mind certain principles about how life and music interrelate, and it was really very, very inspiring. And then I also worked with Ivan Galamian for a while, with Paul Makedevitsky, with David Saron, with these particular violin pedagogues who were very important for me. But as I said, there were many other musicians as well.
What about you, Roger?
I was just thinking, as you said, I had two such contrasting viola teachers. One, I couldn't exactly always remember some very specific things she told me, but somehow I always came out of a lesson on cloud nine. Like, she was so encouraging. And I remember some specific things about phrasing, which, you know, some really extraordinarily important things. She was a quartet player and a total music lover, and so encouraging. And then I had somebody quite, well, the opposite in the sense that he was very, very strict with me, Bruno Girana, and so many exercises and exactly what I needed. And his highest praise, as I tell my students sometimes, was non c'è male, which was not bad. That was the very highest praise he would ever give anybody. So there was these sort of two contrasting ways of doing it, and that really sort of scared me into sort of playing better, you might say. And then a very influential, I was lucky enough to work in European Youth Orchestra and Chamber Orchestra of Europe with the wonderful conductor Claudio Abbado. And I often look back on that. He was so inspiring, and he was a real musical risk taker. I mean, he would go for the softest, sort of almost impossible sort of colors, and sort of fast and very slow tempi, and just everything was so lived and passionate. So I think he was a huge influence as well.
Astrid, influential teachers?
Oh wow, yeah, there's a long list. During my time at Juilliard, I studied with some great cellists, Harvey Shapiro, Leonard Rose. I worked with Bernard Greenhouse afterwards, and I had the crazy good fortune when I was a young aspiring soloist to be introduced to Jacqueline Dupre, and I had 7 years of lessons with her, while I was living in America and traveling back and forth to see her. And it was the chance of a lifetime to really play for and get to know my idol, an extraordinary, great musician. As everybody knows, sorry, this something just flew in my window here that's almost as large as I am. Anyway, it was an extraordinary experience, and I'll always I'm still learning from my lessons with Jackie. Yeah, it's great.
Areta?
Yeah. Well, I studied, every teacher that you study with, I feel like is a huge influence, right? Violinistically, especially. But musically, I would say it's Isaac Perlman. I studied with him for a very long time, almost a decade. And you know what? To this day, just to see a 74-year-old be so curious still about the same music that he's known, not just his life, but music that has been around for, hundreds of years. And just to kind of watch him tear up whenever we watch a video and that phrase just goes like perfectly, and just to see someone that's been through so much, has played everywhere, has played everything, to still be influenced by music that in that way, and to be able to express what was that influenced him, and what that was a gift. That was a real gift that I had for such a long time around me, and that magic will always be around music because of him for me.
That's really beautiful. So let's take our last question. We are at time. So I want to ask this to each of you. What's next for the Juilliard String Quartet? What do you see for the future? Are there any particular projects you're looking forward to? Album recordings? Is there anything that you want to do in this digital space? Let's start with Areta, and we'll go in reverse order.
I saw Ron laughing, and I feel like I know why you're laughing.
Exactly why I'm laughing.
Because who knows what the future holds right now. Yes, look, we have some exciting things hopefully coming up. We don't know exactly when, so we don't really want to say. But there will definitely be a record coming up, which is so exciting. It'll be my first one with the JSQ. I'm just so excited. What else? We have concerts that we don't know if they're going to happen or not, but they're there and we're hopeful. We have commissions that are coming up. We have a 75th anniversary that we're really looking forward to celebrating, with hopefully a lot of concert halls and promoters that have been a part of the quartet for a long time. Yeah, honestly, right now, I just can't wait to get together with these 4 people and make music again and play a concert. And I don't know when it will be, but it will be at some point. So that's as far as I can sort of see right now.
That's something you're looking forward, even though it's not huge. It's something which I think is really important. Astrid?
Yeah, your question was, what are we looking forward to with the quartet? I think Areta covered a lot. We're going to Japan next year with any luck, with travel and the reestablishment of concerts. We are commissioning some wonderful, interesting people, and we have a CD coming out, and we're thinking about making the next one. And there's just so much fantastic repertoire for us to delve into. Yeah. And we just got a little bit lopped off at the knees this season, so we're all very much itching to get back into the throw of things, but swing of things. But we will, as she says, it will happen.
Roger.
Yes, all of the above, and then we're just even started today talking to our manager about just in the more immediate future, how can we be sort of creative about finding a great space when we ourselves feel comfortable coming together again, which hasn't happened yet, and it's not clear when that'll happen. But when we do, whether we can sort of just ease our way in by sort of finding a great place to play with each other and stream things. And I think all the community is debating this and thinking about it and thinking what can we offer and what can be enriching about that. And But as Areta and Astrid said, just getting in the room with each other and playing this music together is what we're, of course, fervently hoping for.
Ron.
And just finding what's next for all of us, not just for the four of us, but for musicians, for chamber musicians. It's not all clear, but I think there's an opportunity in that as well, that that it looks like this is going to have changed our world profoundly enough that new ideas about what's going to be common, I'll put it that way, we're actually in the opportunity of helping to develop those and to discover what those are. And so in a way, there's a lot of excitement in that, along with some sadness that probably our world will never be exactly what it was. And for us to draw from that and to bring our experience into establishing something that's new and really meaningful both to audiences and musicians, and also something that's viable for young musicians, something that will support young musicians. It's all a challenge, and but it's an exciting one.
Yes, an exciting time indeed as we move forward past this moment in time. Thank you all so much for spending your evening with us. And Astrid, we hope that everything's okay there.
You notice I've moved several feet back. We'll be fine. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes. Again, Areta, Ronald, Roger, and Astrid, thank you so much. You can learn more about Juilliard String Quartet at their website, juilliardstringquartet.org. You can also follow them on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you for spending your time with us this evening at the Musco. And on behalf of the Juilliard String Quartet, Chapman University, and Musco Center for the Arts, thank you and have a wonderful night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.